Hey everyone, we just got done converting this 2018 Ram ProMaster 2500 159-inch wheelbase into an off-grid home on wheels. Let's show you inside and show you everything that we've done to this bad boy. We basically will start up here at the front. We have a full height closet and full drawers underneath. So we have these little baskets for storage, laundry at the bottom, mirror at the top, and tons of room for hanging your shirts up here at the top. These all close, and all of our cabinets in the entire van have these nice little latches on them so that they close super clean and stay closed while you're driving. Moving up here, we have a Webasto Airtop STC 2000. That is a heater, so that runs on gas. The controller for that is up there, so you can control that right there. Change your ventilation, temperature, all that kind of stuff up here in the front. And then down here on the bottom, we have this nice little vent so that that heater blows out of this vent across this area right here and keeps the van nice and warm whenever you want it to be warm in here. Basically moving back this way, we have our shower. So this is a 3 foot by 2 foot shower, 2 foot out this way obviously. And we basically use these nice hexagon black tiles to make it look kind of like a slate look and have this nice modern feel inside. We have a nice little LED strip up at the top that goes all the way along the inside. That's a little touch activated LED strip, and that is in a white color because it kind of complements the black to have a nice clean white in there. And then we have this nice little shower head right here, little mixer right here, and then this is a C-head composting toilet. So this thing diverts the urine and separates the solid waste into the back compartment, and you can lift this entire toilet out of the shower if you did want to have more room in the shower. And that thing basically just sits in there while you're driving. If you're gonna go down a really bumpy road, then you can always bungee it down or something like that, but it's pretty solid for most uses. That's the shower. We have a nice sliding door on here. That's a Nautilus retractable sliding door, and you can kind of see how big the shower is when I'm inside of it. So it's super comfortable, and we're gonna be able to take awesome showers in here, or the client will be able to take some awesome showers in there. So go ahead and close that so you can see. Working our way back on this side, we have some coffee cake and a phone and a nice cabinet right here. So this is basically the storage cabinet for most of our kitchen appliances and things like that. So we open these, they have latches on either side to really prevent these doors from swinging open while you're driving. Up on top, we have a nice little silverware drawer where you can store all your utensils, knives, things like that. That's kind of a hidden drawer to keep the faces looking clean. Underneath, I would probably use this for cups, bowls, plates, things like that. Down here on the bottom, we have another drawer that opens, and this is more of a pots, pans, large appliances, instant pot, things like that. At least that's what I would use it for. So just kind of all your kitchen appliances can go down there. And then that also closes with double latches. We also have toe kicks underneath, nice high gloss toe kicks. So it makes it super easy to clean all of the toe kicks in the van, and those match on all sides here. So we have those toe kicks going all the way around, and then cabinets on top of that. These counters, just since we're looking at them, these are solid acacia counters with a live edge on the edge. All right, so moving over here, we have the rest of the kitchen. This is basically starting on this end. We have our acacia countertop again. Once again, we actually bought 2 pieces of this acacia counter and then cut one of them down here in the middle. And then the other piece is cut, and we use that as the rear table back there, but we'll show you that in a second. So this is basically a little pop-up counter right here, so that you can use this if the bed is in bed mode. You can spin this seat around right here, swivel that around, and then use this as a desk or somewhere to eat breakfast while your bed is actually in bed mode, instead of having to convert the entire dinette. So this is just kind of a backup. The other option is to use this to cook on or work on or whatever you want to do. It's always nice to have more counter space. And then that has 2 little latches underneath that you just pull and drop it down. That's just a pop-up counter shelf, or pop-up shelf bracket on Amazon. Moving this way, we have our Dometic CRX 110 fridge. This is a fridge freezer, and basically has tons of room in there. So we have enough room for all of our gallons or half gallons and things like that. Produce bins on the bottom. Nice little freezer compartment on top right there for ice cream and things like that, frozen fruit, all those goodies. This little shelf is kind of for eggs or something like that, I think, or maybe spices, or dressings, condiments, things like that. But this thing has tons of room in it, and it has some lights inside to keep it all illuminated. We went with black because we wanted to kind of match all of the black appliances in the van together. So moving this way, we have the dual burner induction stove. This is from Impava, and this basically uses a total of 1800 watts. So each one of these burners can share the 1800 watts. So you have 1800 watts of total power. This thing is on a 20 amp circuit, an AC circuit, of course, because this is an AC induction stove, and it's just hardwired in, so you can just turn it on, click which stovetop you want, and change the settings accordingly. And this entire cabinet on this side is ventilated. So it's actually ventilated using an automatic thermostat switch. So you have a vent fan sucking air in through here, back from that corner, and then another fan blowing air out the back of this. So this is vented on the back side. So as you can see right here, this is our little vent that basically allows air to be removed from this cabinet. So we have this set on 100 degrees. So whenever the air inside of this cabinet gets to 100 degrees from either the compressor in the fridge or the stove, then those two fans are gonna turn on and start sucking air through this cabinet. Super nice to have that on an automatic thermostat because you don't ever have to deal with turning that fan on or having it running all day. So that's pretty much everything for the stove there. Then we have our pantry right here. This is just a 2-shelf vertical pantry. Really stoked on this. You have tons of room for dry food, and it's right next to your fridge freezer, so it's really kind of systematic, and you have all your food stored in this section. So you have all your cold food, wet food, produce, stuff like that over there, and then a nice dry pantry right here for all of your dry goods. Tons of room in here. You have room for wine bottles on the bottom or whatever you could possibly want to fit. And once again, this entire section of this cabinet is fully ventilated so that these things are protected from overheating. Then moving this way, we have our faucet and our filtered water spigot. So this is just a nice little faucet right here. We have 2 modes, that one and the sprayer. So if you're doing dishes, you can kind of spray them off, move that around. Pretty convenient. This does have hot and cold water. And then this one over here is just for filtered drinking water. And this one goes through an Aquasana 2-stage water filter. So that's basically what we've installed in line. And we're gonna go ahead and show you that underneath this cabinet. Moving down into this cabinet right here, go ahead and open this door. And we have a trash can that you can just set out right there with a nice little lid on it. And then inside of here, let's go ahead and move that. Inside here we have our plumbing coming in. So we have a cold line and a hot line. This is all 1/2-inch PEX with shark bite adapters. And those are both adapted into our sink cold and sink hot lines right there. Right over here we have our water filter supply line, and that's basically going into the input of the water filter. Just like this. On the other side, that's just a push to connect. This is a little adapter that comes with the water filter kit itself, just to tee it in. And then this is a 2-stage water filter. It works really good. I'm really pleased with this. I've tried a lot of different water filters and most of them have not worked. So this thing is pumping out really clean, tasty drinking water. And then this is the output line, which basically runs up to our spigot on top here. Then over here on the other side, we have our drain. So this just basically is the drain for the sink, and it's plumbed through these adapters all the way out the floor. Pretty simple, and then we just have that pipe going out the bottom of the van, and you can connect that to a gray water tank if you choose, or just have it running out the bottom depending on your preference. Then we can close this door. We have these little latches once again on everything, so when you close them, everything is soft close. Super nice, but then once they're closed, you can give them a good little push in to kind of clasp those shut. So I would highly recommend always buying a lot of these if you are doing a van conversion, and just putting them everywhere. So working our way over to here, we basically have our control pillar. This is where we have our Renogy battery monitor. This is a 500 amp battery monitor, and it's just wired down into a shunt, which is basically right between the negative terminal of your battery and your negative bus bar. And that's basically sending you all your data on how many amps are going into the batteries and being pulled out of the batteries. Right underneath that, we have our inverter on-off switch. So you can basically control your inverter right here and turn on all of your AC appliances in the van and all of your AC power supply using that little switch. Makes it super convenient, so you can kind of keep that off most of the time unless you're using the stove or any of the AC outlets. Right down here we have this nice little dimmer switch for the LEDs. So this controls the puck lights up in the ceiling, as you can see right here. You can turn those lower or higher. And then on the bottom of that switch, we have a full on-off. So you can just kind of turn those on and off depending on what you want. We wanted to show you right here, we do have these mosquito nets. So these are just standard mosquito nets, and they are Velcroed on. They work really good, and I basically use fiberglass ones because they're a little bit easier to see through, so you don't have all the lines everywhere. And then on this edge is just tucked into the molding. As well as this curtain, we also have that tucked in. So to kind of show you this curtain as well over here, this thing is basically just mounted on this nice black curtain rod, pulls across just like that, and then we have our other curtain over here that basically meets it in the middle, and those two joints seal. Just have a couple things down here, so that's getting stuck. But that's pretty much all for the mosquito nets and the curtains, and now we're gonna show you the bed. All right guys, so over here we have our water pump switch. This is the on-off switch for your water pump. That would turn it off, that would turn it on. That's just a standard 12-volt switch wired into your hot line of one of your DC power lines basically. And on the other line, it's supplying power down to our water pump, which is down in our plumbing cabinet. Over here, we have our hot water heater timer. So the cool part about this is it allows you to pulse 20 or 30 minutes to your hot water heater of electricity. Instead of turning your hot water heater on to actually let it fully heat up permanently, and reheat once you're in the shower, wasting electricity. This thing is only going to give it 1 dose of electricity to basically heat the 4 gallons up that are in it. That connects to a 4-gallon hot water heater. We just used an EcoSmart just based on our dimensions, but you can also use a Bosch 4-gallon hot water heater for that. Then we have another outlet right here installed into the windowsill that has our USB ports, and this is perfect for charging up and kind of using this as like a laptop work area. So moving back to our rear dinette, we went with the rear dinette style, and our client is sleeping sideways back here. So this is actually 6 foot wide exactly between the windowsills and between the walls. So when you drop these rear cushions down into the middle, turn it into a bed, then you have a 6 foot bed, and we'll show you how that works in a second. But for now, we'll just show you the dinette. We have a lagoon mount table right here with another piece of the acacia cut on top. So this is basically just the acacia counter, and I just cut off the live edge so that it's square and fits onto this nice little ridge here. That spins around, and this entire thing can pivot around in here, as do all lagoon mount tables. So you can kind of move that to wherever you want. You could be working, you can kind of bring it over here. And that thing does come in very handy for just having flexible workspace or dining room area. Then we basically have 5 of these cushions. These are 4-inch memory foam cushions, and these are just upholstered with a nice dark gray microfiber suede material. So it's basically just like a faux suede. Has this nice finish on it. They're super easy to clean. This is my favorite material. And we basically just have 5 of these cushions. So one of these 2 base ones are 24 inches wide. These ones sitting up on the back are 12 inches tall, so they sit flush with the windowsills back here. And then we have this rear one, which just covers the rear bench. And when the bed is converted, that's just kind of an extra cushion as a pillow or a backrest or something like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys how the bed converts from the dinette into the bed. So converting it is pretty simple. You're basically going to undo your table, set it off to the side for a second. Then we're just gonna take our lagoon mount off. It's pretty much as simple as undoing this bottom lagoon mount right here, sliding that off. Then you can just set this off to the side. We're just gonna put it up here for now. You can always store that somewhere else. Take your table, drop that down onto these little ridges here. That basically just slides right down there, and we have these nice little 1x2 ridges that this sits on. So that table is rock solid in there, and then that becomes the support for your bed. Then you just take this middle cushion out, set that aside, pull these backrests down like that. And you have your rear bed made. So that is a full-size bed, 6 feet long by 54 inches wide. So you do sleep this way, and it is super comfortable. It's 4 inches of memory foam. Plus you have some this other fabric that they use in upholstery. It's just kind of like a material to keep the cushions from looking wrinkly. So I would always recommend that. I can kind of show you guys that real quick, what these look like on the inside. So it has this material on here, and that basically just wraps the cushions and keeps this outer material looking nice and smooth. And it adds a little bit more cushion to your cushions. Then you have this as a backrest, so that if you want to relax in bed, you can always sit up here and work on your laptop or whatever you want to do. This becomes a really nice backrest here. So as you can see, it's pretty simple to transition the bed. Doesn't really take that long, and you can always switch it back to dinette or bed depending on what you want. Then you have this nice big beautiful view of the ocean right here, or wherever you're parked next to wake up to in the morning. Alright guys, so we've gone over the entire base of the van pretty much, except the electrical and plumbing, which we'll show you in a second. Now to move up to the upper portion of the van, we have our upper cabinets right here. These basically just open on these nice hinges. Instead of doing that whole hydraulic strut thing, these hinges are a lot nicer. They're from IKEA, and they just work really, really good. They help to kind of lift these doors open right here, and then you have this nice little latch right here as well. So these hold tons of stuff. These are all 36 inches long, so you can put like a yoga mat or a camp chair even up into these upper cabinets. And you have 4 of these all around. So tons of storage up top for whatever you could really need. And those all snap shut with these nice little RV latches. Just like that. Then basically moving over here, this is one of the prizes of this van. This is the Fresair evaporative cooler. It's technically an evaporative cooler, not an air conditioner, but it does do almost the same thing. It blows really cold air out of it. We've compared this to an air conditioner, and some days it's slightly less cold, but almost always it is matching what an air conditioner can put out. And that's just using water and 10 amps of 12-volt electricity. So it's super low amperage. It's 120 watts, rated to 120 watts on high, and that is DC. So it's basically connected and supplied through this little hose right here, which has 2 water lines in it. 1 line carrying water up to the unit, 1 line returning water back down. And then we do have some wires running through there as well to supply water to the water pump that's down in the bench, and as well as the float that's going to indicate if you have low water. So basically this thing works awesome. If we turn it on here, you press the power button, it's gonna warm up and start blowing some super strong, super cold air out of here. And within about 5 minutes, the air starts to really cool down as it starts to actually absorb the water up into the filter. The way that this whole system works is it actually has one of these, which is a pine filter. So basically this is inside of the unit up on top of the roof. And this kind of sits in a pool of water. And then this thing basically sucks air through this wet pine. So as the air passes through the wet pine, it cools the air down, and we have super cold air blowing out of here anytime. And this is also super strong. So wherever this is positioned is going to cool down the entire area underneath it, completely adequate. And this is definitely one of the best solutions to van life air conditioning, especially for the price, without spending $5 grand or without using a ton of electrical, because we're only at 10 amps. The closest competition is $5 grand and pretty much 50 amps, about 40 to 50 amps of 12-volt DC power. So that's not very feasible for most people on an off-grid system. So this thing definitely solves those issues. So that's basically all for the Fresair. This thing works amazing. I'm super stoked on this product. And it basically just blows nice, cold, evaporative cooled air to anywhere underneath it. You can also use it without the water. You can turn off the water, or you can just have it as a fan. There's a lot of options up here, but this blower is extremely powerful, and you can always seal those vents if you wanted to close off one vent. Moving up, we have our LED puck lights on the ceiling. This is all just shiplap. And then back here, or up at the front of the van, we just have a MaxxAir Deluxe, pretty standard vent fan right here. This is for exhausting air out of the ceiling. Obviously we have a little manual open right here, and that thing just kind of keeps all of the hot air pulled out of the van. And that is ventilated via 2 rear slider windows, which we'll just show you in a second. So as you can see, we have 2 of these motion windows, rear windows on the back doors with these little slides in them. So the cool part about these is they lock like that. You can open these and slide the glass open, or slide the screen open as well. Those things are awesome. And the cool part is that we have 2 of these. So when you're laying in bed and the vent fan is turned on, you have air being sucked through both of these 2 rear vented windows. So you do always want to have airflow coming through the van. It's going to protect all of your wood in the van, protect everything in the van, and just kind of keep it nice and cool and have fresh air inside. So that's where having these nice little slider rear windows comes in very handy. These are for motion windows. On the sides of the van, we'll go around the side here. We have these C.R. Lawrence full-length windows. These basically take up the entire rear quarter panel of the van, and those are super awesome. They basically, they're kind of expensive, but they give you this nice panoramic view out of the entire side of the van. So moving down from our window right here, we have our water fill. So we have 2 options for filling your water. We have city water pressure right here. So that's where you would screw a hose in. And it's super nice to have this fill on the outside of the van, because when water drips out, these things are notoriously unreliable, especially when you're unplugging your hose. So no matter how good you are, what kind of water fill valve you have, you're going to spill water. So for us, we basically put it right here on the back so that when we spill water, it just runs down the side. So we have a city water fill and a gravity water fill right next to it. So that one is gravity. And that one basically means you can just pour water in. And then this one is also a vent hose. So that basically allows the tank to vent while you're filling it with city or gravity, so that it can kind of breathe out the top and release that pressure inside so it doesn't overinflate and pop or anything like that. So that's pretty much all for that water fill. Now we're gonna go ahead and show you the back side of the van, the electrical system, plumbing, and the garage. Alright guys, so we are at the back of the van here. Just wanted to give you a tour of all of the internals of the rear benches and basically everything that's inside here. So we'll start off right here in the middle. This is the simple part. This is just our kind of mock miniature garage. So inside here we just have two of these nice wire baskets. These just slide out so that you can put wet things like leashes and all kinds of stuff like that in there. And we do have two of those baskets, and then we have a little bit of plumbing and electrical running across on the inside. This is just a nice little door here, and this matches the rest of the faces, and then that just snaps shut in the middle there. Moving over to this side, we have a little shower box. So this opens up with a key. This is actually designed for the outside of an RV, but you can just kind of open that up, grab your little shower head right out of there. Pretty convenient. And then you can literally just turn it on just like this. So you have a nice little outdoor shower. You have hot and cold water, so there's hot water here, cold water here. And then when you're done with this, you can kind of let it drain out. Wrap it up here. And then just slide that back into that box. Shut that box, and it kind of keeps it nice and consolidated. So the cool part about having that is if you wanted to rinse off your dog or rinse off your mountain bike or gear or anything like that, then you can take that little sprayer. You can mount it up on the door. You could get a little shower head mount or something like that, or just use it to spray everything off, you know, and kind of have a nice little outdoor rinse station. And then you can store any of that gross gear inside of here so it doesn't ever come inside the van. Moving over to this side, this is our fuse panel, and we're going to show you that in a little bit when we go over the electrical system. But for now, I wanted to explain the plumbing system. Alright guys, so we just wanted to show you what's inside of our plumbing bench. So basically, back here we have a 42-gallon water tank. That thing fits all the way up to the front, up against our front cabinet there. And then inside of here, our other components are basically a 4-gallon electric hot water heater that is connected to our hot water line and basically supplies hot water to the entire van. Then we have our little shower box here, our water pump here, and then down at the bottom there, we have another pump, which is what supplies the water up to our Fresair. So we have two of these lines going up to the Fresair. One of them is the supply line, and then this line right here returns water back down into the top of the tank from the Fresair unit. So then we also have our fill lines. We have our city water fill, which is this blue one here, our gravity water fill, which is this kind of braided one, and then our vent hose over here, which is just this clear vinyl. Then this is our supply for the hot water heater, and that is hardwired in right there. Then we also have our supply for the water pump, which is 12 volt, so this is AC. This is DC right here, so that we're supplying power to both of the appliances in this cabinet. And those are just both hardwired in and permanently spliced. And then this hot water heater is controlled by that timer that we have up there. So essentially you have your water that comes into your water tank via your fill valves. So you have your gravity and your city filling the water tank. Then water comes out the bottom through this lower port. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, but it basically comes out of that lower port, tees off, and right there you have a valve going out of the bottom of the van with a handle on it underneath the van to drain the entire system. Then the next thing in line there is this nice sediment filter. So that comes with your water pump. That basically keeps any sediment that is inside the tank inside that filter. So eventually, maybe once a year, once every 6 months, you can replace that sediment filter or clean that out so that you're not getting any of that junk clogged up long term. Then basically it tees off. One line goes into your water pump, which pressurizes the entire water system, and then another line goes off into your Fresair pump and is adapted onto our 1/2-inch PEX so that we can supply water up to our Fresair using the same kind of adapter like this just down there, because this is the return line. After your water pump, it basically goes outside of the water pump and into a cold line. So that's your cold pressurized line beginning. One of those tees off down to your cold shower. One of them tees off over here, and then that tees off over to your sink. Another one tees off over to your shower right here, and then another one tees off into your cold water heater supply line. Coming out of the water heater, so that basically runs to all of your cold appliances. Coming out of your water heater here, then we have a hot water supply line, and that is pressurized as well. So all of these PEX lines are pressurized, and our hot water comes out of the water heater here, tees off down to our hot shower box, tees off again over here, over to the shower, and then one more tee coming out of here over to our sink, which is routed all the way across here and into the sink cabinet. Now, I wouldn't generally recommend putting any water lines inside of your electrical cabinet, but this is where our client wanted her sink, and so we had already designed most of this beforehand. But I will say that I have never had one of these shark bite fittings leak. These things are rock solid. So as you can see here, we've used a lot of shark bite fittings, push to connect fittings for everything. These things are not cheap, but I highly recommend them. A little tip for you guys on plumbing, if you are doing plumbing, is to adapt all of your appliances to 1/2-inch pecs. Before you do anything, get all of your appliances, your water pump, water heater, water tank, shower, faucet, all that good stuff, and adapt it so that it has a push to connect 1/2-inch pecs fitting on it. And then it makes it really simple to do the rest of your plumbing so that you can just connect it all very simply. And we also explain that in the course pretty in depth. Now we're done with the plumbing, and we want to give you guys a little tour of the electrical cabinet. All right guys, so we're back here in our electrical cabinet, and we just wanted to give you guys a really comprehensive look at what we have for an electrical system back here. So as you can see, we already went over the plumbing system, which is in the other bench over there, and then this entire bench is dedicated to electrical. So we'll go ahead and start off with the batteries. The batteries are pretty much the core of the entire system, and these are 3 170 amp hour lithium iron phosphate batteries from Renogy. They are wired in parallel, so you basically have a total of 510 amp hours of lithium iron phosphate battery storage inside of here. So basically you have your positive terminals here, negative terminals here, and then coming off of your positive terminal, we'll show you every single component of the system, because that's what I always wanted to see when I saw van tours. Right here we have a 300 amp MRBF fuse. That is your main system fuse, and that is just mounted straight onto the head of the positive terminal. Coming out of there, we have a 2-aught wire with 2 lugs on it going into our main on-off switch for the entire system. So if you turn this switch off, that shuts down all power to the system. So basically we have a protection fuse for the system, an on-off switch for the system, and then that goes into our positive bus bar. This has 4 terminals on it. Basically, starting off with our terminals here, we have one of these on the first terminal, supplies power to our shunt, so that our shunt and our battery monitor have a little bit of power supply to run. So that's what that little red wire is. The second wire over here runs down to our inverter, so that's our positive inverter connection, and this is an inverter charger, so this will basically be going both ways, either taking DC energy, going through here and putting it into the inverter and then out into our AC loads, or having our AC shore power plug-in come in through our shore power inlet, which is down there on the back bumper. We have that installed right down there, that little latch, and you can just plug in an extension cord to that, and then the shore power will actually be going the other way through the charger side of the inverter back into the batteries. So that's our inverter connection. Right here we have our alternator charger connection. So that's connected to our Renogy DC to DC 60 amp alternator charger. This thing is pretty awesome, and it's connected basically with an ignition switch right here. Then on the other side we just have a supply line coming from our positive from the alternator, and this cord over here is just our negative. We have a negative here coming off of that, and then our positive coming out off of that, which is where the electricity is coming out, going through a 70 amp breaker. This is a 60 amp DC to DC charger, so we have 70 amp breakers on either side of it to protect the wires if anything goes wrong. So out of that breaker right here, these are these T-Tocus yellow breakers on Amazon. Then it comes down through here and goes into our positive bus bar and then into our batteries. So that's pretty much all for the alternator charging. Then, and then basically just to reiterate, this cable right here is just a D positive cable. This is just connected to an ignition cable basically, which is any cable that is powered on when the van is on. So we actually connected that into our cigarette lighter, which is right down here, and that just has a little positive connection on it. You can basically connect that cable into any ignition positive wire, but it's really easy if you have a cigarette lighter that's activated by the ignition being on in the van. Then moving over here, we have our solar charger basically coming in through this cable right here, and then our DC positive load going out into our DC distribution on the other side. So over here now, we're gonna go to our negative bus bar. Remember, bus bars basically just take a positive or negative terminal and expand it into 4 posts. So it makes it a little bit easier and organized to connect all of your wires to it. So that's all of our positive connections, all of our hot connections. Every one of these wires should have a breaker in it or a fuse to protect those wires from electricity from burning those up. Then basically on our negative bus bar, we'll start off with the ground. That basically is just grounded to a chassis ground, and if you can see in there, it's bolted to the actual chassis. We've sanded off or I've used a little wire brush to basically grind the paint off and then just bolt that cable down to the actual chassis of the van. So that grounds all of our negatives to the entire chassis, and it allows us to not have to run a return cable from the alternator back to our alternator charger. Instead, we can just ground our alternator charger to the negative bus bar, and then that uses the van to basically create a ground. So connected to that, we have the same things again. We have our negative cable, which is connected to our batteries right here. And that just connects our negative battery terminal to our negative bus bar. Down here we have a shunt, which is basically connected to our battery monitor. This is basically measuring how much amperage goes in and out of the batteries. So then this little communications cable goes off to our Renogy battery monitor over there. So that is our battery connection. Moving this way, we have our inverter connection going down to the negative terminal of our inverter charger. Right here, we have our connection to our alternator charger from the other side. And then we have our other connection to the alternator charger on this side. So those are two negatives coming off of each side of the alternator charger. And then down in there, we also have our DC distribution and our solar charge controller connection. Now working this way, we have our solar charge controller. This is a Renogy Rover 40 amp MPPT charge controller connected to 400 watts of solar up on the roof. And that is just the Renogy 400 amp premium kit. That includes this little ANL fuse right here, and that basically is going to protect those wires from any sort of surge in the solar panels, or if the charge controller ever outputs more than 40 amps. Right here we have a Bluetooth module, and this basically just connects into our Renogy Rover charge controller and allows you to connect in and kind of get some diagnostics, see how your system's doing, see how your solar is doing, and kind of track all of your solar usage and things like that. So that's your solar connection, your alternator connection, your storage, and then down here we have our inverter charger. So the inverter charger basically takes your DC electricity, turns it into AC electricity. This is a 3000 watt pure sine wave Renogy inverter charger. Basically powers all of the AC appliances in the van. And basically going into this, we have a shore power connection. That's 10-2 Romex going in, and that comes from our shore power inlet, which is a 30 amp inlet. Then coming out, we also have a 30 amp main service, basically 3000 watts coming out of this, and that is going into our AC distribution panel back here, which we'll show you in a second. But basically the inverter charger is responsible for the entire AC side of the system and charging the batteries on shore power, and that's all programmed inside of there. And then we have one more cable coming off the inverter, which goes up to our inverter on-off switch up on the control pillar. So I wanted to go over one little thing here before we show you the AC/DC panel. So basically this is a thermostat switch, the same that we have inside of our fridge and induction stove cabinet. This basically is hardwired into two fans. So we have a computer fan here and a computer fan right over here behind our alternator charger. And basically one of those fans pulls air in here, and then the other one blows air out there. So it keeps this entire cabinet right here ventilated. And whenever the temperature in this cabinet goes above 100 degrees, or you can change that using the little dial on the back, then it will basically start ventilating this cabinet until it drops the temperature 20 degrees. That protects all of the electrical appliances in here and keeps everything from burning up or anything like that. You always want your electrical cabinet to be ventilated. Pretty much anything such as fridge, electronics, induction stove, anything like that needs to have ventilation in it so that you're not overheating and risking a fire or risking burning out an appliance. So that's all for that. And then moving back to our AC/DC distribution panel. This is a Progressive Dynamics 30 amp AC/DC distribution panel. This is something that I had a very hard time finding on my first build, how to wire this and basically how to install it. We do have the entire tutorial on how to do that in our conversion course, but just to give you a basic idea here, we basically have the AC power supply line. So we have an AC side of the panel and a DC side of the panel, and then we'll show you the breakers on the other side in a second. So on the AC side, we have a 10-2 Romex cable, 30 amp main service coming in from our inverter charger. That's the output of the inverter charger going in through here and then into our main breaker, which will be distributed to all of our 20 amp sub breakers, and that connects to all of these 12-2 Romex wires coming out the back here, and then these go out to all of our circuits, which are essentially our hot water heater, our induction stove, all of the different AC outlets in the van, things like that. So we'll show you the other side in a second. Then on the other side here, we have a negative bus bar. That's where all of your DC negative circuits are going to connect into. And then we have our positives. So that's where your positives are going to connect into. And these ones are particular. So when you connect these, you'll be placing a fuse on the other side on the fuse block according to each one of these cords, or each one of these cables. Then you have a positive supply line right over here. So that positive supply runs over here through a 50 amp DC breaker, and we're basically just using a 50 amp breaker because we're never going to use more than 50 amps on all of our DC appliances at once. And then we also have a negative wire going over from the DC from the negative bus bar over to our negative bus bar that connects to our batteries. So that basically, you know, is your negative connection and your positive connection right here. And then you have your, you know, connections going out to all of your circuits on the sides there. So that's the back side of this panel. Now we're gonna go ahead and show you the front side and what it looks like with all the fuses and breakers installed. Okay, so we are on the other side of the AC/DC distribution panel. I'm gonna go ahead and pop this faceplate off for you guys. But before I do that, I'll just kind of explain what's inside here. So we have our 30 amp main breaker right here and 20 amp circuit breakers to all of the individual breakers, and those are all labeled right there accordingly. So this is where your inverter is coming in, or where your shore power is being passed through the inverter. Just wanted to show you the inside of that shore power as well. So that's a twist on 30 amp input, and then we have adapter for that to go to 15 amps for a standard extension cord if you're plugged in. So up here basically we have our AC breakers and then all of our DC fuses, and all of those fuses are labeled on the other side as well. Then right here, if we were to open this up, you can kind of see on the inside and kind of the skeleton here. So we basically have all of our hot lines going into these breakers, and that's where the electricity is being supplied out from the breaker. The main breaker coming in, electricity going into the bus bar that these are connected to, and then off of those bus bars into these breakers and out of all of these black lines going out to the appliances. Then down here we have our neutrals, or I'm sorry, our grounds, and then we have our neutrals right here. So these are all the white cables, all of the greens, and just bare copper cables, and then all of the blacks are gonna go into your breakers there. Pretty simple to do. And then over here, you just wanna size all of your fuses according to the size of the appliance and what it's basically going to be drawing. It's not that critical for us because we've done 12 gauge cable throughout the van. So it's more to kind of protect the appliance itself rather than the actual wire. All of our 12 gauge wire on here and here is very conservative. So we did run 12-2 Romex for all of the circuits in the van, and then basically 12 gauge 2 wire. It's like red and black speaker wire to all of the DC appliances in the van. So we have all of those right there. And then you can pop this panel back on and basically snap that into place. And the cool part is this really shows you very crystal clear all of your different appliances, and if anything ever goes wrong or an appliance doesn't work, anything electrically doesn't work, then this is definitely the first point of reference for all of that. So that's kind of our comprehensive look at our electrical system here on this van. So just to reiterate on the roof setup, basically at the front here we have our Maxair Deluxe vent fan, and then in between that and our Fresair we have 4 100 watt Renogy solar panels mounted up on the roof, wired in series. So we have a positive and a negative cable coming down through there with a 40 amp fuse in line on there on the positive line. That's just an MC4 fuse running down, and then those cables run all the way down into our electrical system. Then behind that we have the shroud for the Fresair. So basically up on the roof you have Fresair, solar, and then the vent fan, and all of that sits pretty low and looks pretty stealthy up there. Alright guys, that's all for the van tour today. Thank you so much for watching. We're really excited about this build and about to hand it off to our client, who's very excited to see it. This entire build actually has a course alongside it as well. So if you're interested in any of this information or how to build this exact van, we do have an entire course being released through Tricked Out Vans, and that will be available pretty soon here. So you can go ahead and check out Tricked Out Vans, or you can message Shaiden on Instagram, that's my account, and we'll get you all set up, added to the email list and all that good stuff to notify you when the course is ready. And that course pretty much has everything that you could possibly need to build this van from scratch. So everything from finding the van and designing the layout to taping it off, and how to source the van, all those good things, and then every single step of the actual build, all of the electrical, all of the plumbing. We have full 4K footage of every single component and every little step of this van build, so that anyone could take an empty cargo van and convert it into this exact build if they wanted to, or modify it and kind of create whatever layout you want and just kind of use the principles of our electrical system, plumbing system, all that good stuff, and make whatever van you want. But that's all for today's tour, and stay tuned for the course if that's something that you're interested in. We're also going to be posting more free content on the Tricked Out Vans YouTube channel, and we're excited to get this to our client.